In this video we're going to build upon the movie trivia app that we built a couple of weeks ago and make it a bit more complicated. But if you haven't watched that video and you've got some Flutterflow experience, don't worry, you should be good to keep up. Let's start building. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we're going to build on top of the movie trivia game we built in previous video, the link to which will be somewhere on the screen if you haven't already seen it. Now, if you are a complete Flutterflow novice, I do suggest you go back and watch it and get to this point. If you're not a Flutterflow novice, I think you'll probably be able to catch up and keep up. I'm not going to go over that stuff again. We're just going to build on top of it, but if you've done this kind of thing before and you've played around with Flutterflow a little bit, you should be able to build out to the point we're at anyway. But say if you are a complete novice, I do suggest you go back and watch that and get to this point and then carry on. So with that said, what we're going to do, we're going to be adding some more questions. So currently we have got 10 questions within the Superbase table, which we are going to put probably another 20 in there. And we're going to select them randomly, and we're going to have some logic that allows us to do that without repeating the questions. We're going to change the user interface, which is what we're going to do first. We're going to change some of this so it looks better and use some different widgets that we didn't use first time. And then we are going to add a leaderboard and your username, so it shows your place on the leaderboard. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Like I did before, I'll do it step by step as I go. I'm not too sure how I'm going to do it yet. Like again, I'm going to do it as I go along. So let's get started and see what happens. Right, so starting off on the home page, we're going to lose this image because the movie trivia spelt wrong bothers me slightly. Now, I tried this several more times and basically I gave up because OpenAI's image generation model simply can't spell the word trivia. It just, no matter how many times you do it, it cannot spell the word correctly. So I changed it to movie quiz. So what we're going to do, we need to upload a new image. So you need to go to your media assets, and obviously we've got this one in here already, and we need to click on the upload media button. So we want main image and we'll upload that. Okay, so that's uploaded successfully. Now we can remove that one. So click on delete and it'll remove it, and then we go back to our page, it will still be there. But what we'll do on the right hand side in the properties panel, just scroll to the bottom and you'll see now it's got no asset selected even though the image is still shown. And then what we do, we just change our image. There we go. I tried to go for an Art Deco 1930s style, which it kind of done. Got the word quiz twice, but I think I can live with that. So it's better than what we had before. At least everything's spelt correctly. Although, does that say movie or is that two V's? Not sure, but we'll go with that. We'll stick with that. So that's what we've got. And now we'll start going on to the game page. So we're going to add some basic stuff here. We're not going to go too mad, but we're going to make it look a bit like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, when you got the different sections and they highlight when you selected an answer. So we're going to do that, and we're going to put the score on a background. So I'm going to try and do this without just by adding the new sections and moving the existing objects around. If that don't work, we'll just delete them and start again, but hopefully we can do this without doing that. So we've got our column there. Now if you remember back in here on the widgets, this is where we select all the widgets we want to use, and what we're going to do, we want to drag a row in above the score. Okay, so we've got a new row there, and on there we then want to add something called a stack. So if you select the stack and drag that, and then down on the right hand side there, while your stack is still selected, and just give it a width and a height of 200 pixels for now. We may change that later. And then select the row and then center it in the row. So now we've got a stack. Now what a stack does, it allows us to put objects on top of one another, and that's where we're going to put our score. So we're going to move this up here, but first we want to put an image. So if we go back to our media assets, there we go, and we want to upload media again, and then you want to select the one called red dot, which is in the doc that we gave you there, and that's a basically just a red circle with a clear background of PNG. So then if that's there, so then go back to our page, and then we need to drag an image into our stack. So drag the image widget into your stack. Okay, and our image type again on the properties panel on the right. Image type will be an asset, and we want the red dot. Okay, right, so we've got the image in our stack. Now what we want to do now, if we drag a column into our stack on top of our image, you see we'll have a column there. Then our score text, you see there, we want to select that and drag that into the column above. Okay, and the column, and you see it's there set. If you select the column, you see it's there, it's set for top, so we need to make that central. And then if we select the text and scroll down to the text color, we'll now make that secondary background, which is white. And then our score there is in a circle. So the row that you've taken out there, you can now delete. So select the row and either right click and bin it there, or just press the delete key. So for now we'll leave the correct and wrong sections. Now that's not a very good red actually. That's what we'll do. Let's go into the app bar, DD2012. What I'm going to do, I'm going to replace the red dot image, which, so when you get the red dot image it will be the correct colour, but the one I've done, I just kind of looked to one that looked about the right red, so I will correct that now. So when the one you get from the folder will be the correct colour for what we've used everywhere else. Right, so I've been busily changing the colour of the image and re-uploading it. So there we go, that is now the same colour as everything else. So the one you download will be this colour, so you won't have to do what I've just done. So, but you should have our page looks like this. We'll leave the correct and wrong sections for now. We may change that. So now what we're going to do, we're going to add something called a container. So basically, you see it there on the widgets, and if we want to drag it just above the question text there, so in there we'll have a new container. So they come standard square, so that's fine. So these don't necessarily need to be in a row. To be honest, they'll just sit in the column normally, so I don't always put these in a row because there's no real need to. Now then, our screen width is 393, so we want it to cover most of the screen, but we've got a bit of a border at the side. So let's go for a width of 375. That'll do. And then we can do some things with this. Now we'll leave the height as 100 for now. But what's first? So we want to drag this row and put it in the container. So what we'll do first, let's change the paddings back to the 10 all the way around. And if you remember, you can do it either that way or with the slider. And we want to lift that row and drag it into our container. And there we go, that's there. So when we go back and select our container, what we want to do, there's some things we can do here to make it look a bit better. So you can give it a border radius. So again, you can do it individually or with the slider, and we'll make the border radius 10. And then if we go for elevation, what that does, that lifts it off the page, so you can see there's a separate container there. If we go for an elevation of 3, what does that do? Okay, we'll leave it like that for now. And then what we want to do now though, on the container, we want some space between the correct wrong text and the container. So again, padding up there. Let's go for maybe a bit more than that. Let's go for 40. Okay, so our question will now sit in that container. What we're going to do the same thing for each of the answers, and then we'll drag the rows that our containers are sitting in. We're going to then drag those in, sorry, the rows that our answers are sitting in, we're going to drag those into containers, and then we're going to have basically 5 containers in the button. And then what will happen is when we select an answer, we're going to set it so we can change the colour of the container depending on which answer we selected. So I'm not 100% sure about this little raised thing, but we'll leave it like that for now and maybe change it in a little while. So, right. Let's go back to the widgets, and if we go drag another container in, and we'll do it below just because it's easier. And then what width did we give that in the end? 375. So give it a width of 375, and it doesn't need to be 100 pixels high. Let's half that to 50 for now, and give it the border radius again of 10, an elevation of 2, and then we want to select the row of D. So that row there, so you can see you've got the row and then the text objects are within the row, and then we've got the container there. So that row, we'd select that and drag that into the container. And you can see we've got that there. And then we want to do the same for A, B and C. So let's put a container in there. 375. 50, just the same properties basically. Border radius of 10, elevation of 2. Okay, and then select one of these items, and then the row that they're in, drag it in there. Now we need to give these some space in a minute, so we'll do that in a second. And then let's drag another one, and what we'll do with this one, just so you can see, we will, so it's 375 and 50, and then radius 10 and elevation 2, just so it brings it off the page. You can see we've got the blank container. What we're going to do now, if you select container and right click it and duplicate it, we'll get another one, which just makes life a bit easier. So we can just select the B row, drag that down to the bottom one, and then we can select the A row and drag that down to that one. So now we've got our containers with our answers. So it doesn't look great at the minute, but once they're, I may change the colour background actually, see what happens. Right, so container. So what we need to do is put some padding around these. I think side to side we're okay. It's just top and bottom. So if we add 10 top and 10 bottom to each container, and then what that's going to do, it'll give us 20 pixels between our answers. And our button has scrolled off the bottom of the screen, which, does it matter? Not really. Right, so what we need to do now, so our button is gone off the bottom of the screen. Now if you do your mouse wheel, you'll see nothing happens. So you need to enable scrolling, which is something we didn't do previously. So if you go back to over here, our first column, which is our main column, and then if you make that scrollable, and then when you roll your mouse button, you'll be able to scroll. But what we'll do as well, we'll add probably some, there we go, so our users can read the questions and the answers and then click the next button. Possibly we could do with maybe bringing this up and getting it all without the scroll, but it just gives an example of how to set the scroll up. So on the column, which is the main column on our, so we've got game, which is the page, and the first column, which is the main column widget we're using. You see that's that grey line on the left hand side, and everything else is a child of it. That's when we'll set to scroll, and then everything within it will scroll up and down. Okay, so what we need to do is change it so we can change these colours when we tap them, basically, because we've still got on the row, we've still got the actions for playing the game. So what we want to do is change the colours, but I'm going to see what it looks like. Let's go take the container, because the thing about containers, what you can't do with rows and columns, etc. So if we just take a row, there's no option to change the background colour, whereas containers, we can change the background colour, which is pretty handy, because it just gives a bit more options when it comes to your user interface. So you don't have to necessarily have used an image there as the background for the circle, but down here we can make these containers whatever colour we want. So rather than keeping everything white, I was wondering if we could maybe make the question a colour. What happens if what goes with red? I mean, grey goes with red, doesn't it? Ooh, no, that looks terrible. I'll think about that. We may change that. I'm not convinced on the all white, everything white. We could put a boundary board around them, so there's another option. You can put borders around them, so if we make a border colour, and on the custom colours we use that red colour we've been using, for instance, and the border width, make 2 pixels. What about that? Let's leave the question in the border for now and leave the answers without, and then we'll maybe change it again later. As I've said many times, design is not my forte, unfortunately. I wish it was, but it isn't. So anyway, so I think that'll do for now on that. So we need to decide if these are going to be, what colour these are going to be, basically. So for that we need some page states. So because what we can do with fill colours of containers, if we click on the little orange icons there, we can make the colour conditional, and then so it'll be an if then else. So basically if we selecting it, basically it will become grey probably, or pink or something, and else it will be white. That's basically what we're going to do. So if it's true, it becomes this. If it's false, it becomes that. So, and that's on the container. So for that we need some page states. So if we go to, so if you remember state management on the, just on the page, you deselect everything and then you'll get these options at the top. So state management, and then we've already got some page state variables from the previous video. We're going to add another 4, which is answer A, answer B, answer C and answer D. So I'll call that answer A, and it's going to be a true or false, which is Boolean, and initial field wants to be set to false, so it wants to be red. That's quite important because obviously on everything we're going to change the colour based on the turning it to a positive value basically. And then so do that for the rest of the answers. As I've said before, this is something I'm kind of making up as I go along, so you may answer C. You may actually think, why are you doing it like that? Surely there's a better way of doing it. There possibly is. If I sat down and worked this out before I was building, but I think sometimes it's quite important just to build, because I think you learn so much more just messing around, building things, getting it wrong, starting again. Kind of good way of learning. Right, so we've got our 4 new page state variables all set to false. Okay, so confirm that. And then on the container, what we probably should do actually is, let's select, so the actions on the row, we really want those to be moved to the container, so we're only putting the action on one of the elements rather than on 2. So what we will do is, if you select, so copy conditional actions rather than cut them. We could cut them, but I'm a bit nervous about losing them and having to do it again, so we'll just copy them for now. And then select the container and go into the action editor on the container and then paste the actions. Do we get any errors? No, that's good. Right, so what we need to do is add some items above this that relate to changing the colours. But what we'll do first is go back to the row in the action editor, and then we'll delete those conditional actions. So they're now removed from the row and added to container, as you can see on the left hand side there in the widget tree. On the one below, which we haven't done yet, you can see the action. That means there's 4 actions look on the row. The one above, we've moved them to container, so that's good. What we'll end up doing is doing the same for all of these, and we'll won't copy and paste them, we'll just cut them out. That means we don't have to go back in and paste them. So right, so if we go do container, and what do we need to do? We need to set, so we need to add an action, but we want it to be above there. Right, okay, so if we cut these actions again, then add an action, and then paste those. So what I've done, rather than trying to put a new one in above, which doesn't make it very easy for you to do, I'll just cut them, put a new one in, then pasted that back below. So all we've done there is just add an action at the top. Is kind of the easiest way of doing it, I think. And then what we want to do is state management is update the page state, and answer A, we want to set value to true. But also what we need to do is set all the others false, because we only want to have one highlighted at a time. So what we're doing, we are setting A true, and then what we'll do in the colour conditional actions, if answer A is true, basically it'll go grey, but all the others will be false. So any of the others which are highlighted will then go automatically back to white, and they'll all override each other when you do it. So what we need to do then is add a field here, and answer B needs to be set value to false. Then we need to do that for answer C and answer D. And what that means is that answer A will be true and all the others will be false. And I'll show you what we're going to do in a second, and then that then does the logic for updating the score and everything that we did in the previous video. But I will go back over that. So if you're new to this video and you didn't watch the previous one, I will go back over this logic shortly, so you can see what we've done. So what we need to do now is on the A container, we go back into the properties and we want background color. So fill color wants to be conditional. So it wants to be select on the top option and it's a single condition, and basically if the first value wants to be your answer A page state, which is answer A, so basically if answer A equals true, and then we can set that colour to whatever we want. What's gonna, not quite sure what's going to look good actually with black. Let's go to Ascent 4 because that's a kind of a different grey. It doesn't look it on there, but it is when you see it on the screen. Otherwise secondary background. So what we're saying is, so if we tap on A, i.e. we turn the answer A true, the answer A variable true, we're going to colour the background the Ascent 4 colour, which is a very slightly different grey, but it will be noticeable, which it won't be noticeable so much on here, but it will when you see it on the screen when it's running, and otherwise it's going to be white, basically is what we've currently got. And we're going to do that for all of the others, but obviously we'll be changing the action on the tap. So we confirm that. Going to our action editor, we want to copy this, just copy the top action. We don't want the action chain. We're going to get that from elsewhere, remember. So if we want the B container, go into the action editor and paste the action. Okay, so what we need to do here though is we need to set A false, obviously, and we need to set B true. So what we're doing now, when we tap this, B becomes true and others become false. And what we'll do that for the others first. Again, container C, action editor, paste the action, and we're setting A to false because that's when we've pasted, but we're setting C to true. Hopefully this is not too confusing. And then paste the action, and we're setting A to false again because again we've copied and pasted the A action, but we're setting D to true. So what will that happen there is when you tap on any of the answers, all of the others will go white and only one will be coloured. That's basically what we're doing. So, but what we haven't done is the colour logic. We've done the setting the variables, we haven't done the colour logic, so we can copy and paste that as well. So if we open up the fill colour option there on the orange text, and if you go copy variable there, and on container B, go into the properties on the fill colour, then you can paste the variable. But what we need to do is change that to answer B. Page date, answer B, confirm, equal to true, confirm, and then we'll keep the same colours, just to speed it up very slightly. And then again on container C, head back to your colour palette, and then on the fill colour dynamic options, I guess you call them, rather than just the static colour, you can paste the variable again, and we're changing that from answer A to page date C, and then on confirm that, and then on container D do the same. Page date, answer D, confirm. So basically what will happen is there, we've set it so whenever you tap on one of those, they'll essentially go grey and the others will be white. So if you change your mind, it will just change the colour. That's what we've done there. So that's that. Now what we need to do, if you remember, on the row so let's get container A up. At the moment you can see that we moved our actions from the row into the container on A, but as you can see we haven't yet done it on B, C and D. So I'm going to select that row into the action editor, cut the conditional actions, and which means they've removed, and then we need to put them on the container. So open the action editor and we paste them underneath that. Okay, and then you'll see if we select that, container B, look, we've got actions on the container but none on the row, but we've still got them on the others, so we need to do the same for the others. Open the action flow editor, cut the conditional actions, and on the container paste them below, and then on D, on the row, cut the actions, select the container, open the editor and paste them. Right, so what we've got there, we've got the same logic that answers the questions and changes the score of what we had before and tells us if we're correct or wrong, but what we've added is a little bit more complexity in the user interface. So we've got our circle, obviously, which should just go highlight score a bit better. I think maybe the text is probably going to be too small when we do that, but we'll come back to that. And then we'll be tapping these and they'll be changing colours. Okay, so what I'm going to do in a minute, I will come back and go over, for those that didn't watch the previous video, I will go over these actions down here shortly. So if you haven't been able to copy and paste these because you don't have them, don't worry, just keep this bit at the top where we are, and then I'll briefly go over these so you know what we've done, so you can recreate them, so you can keep up if you haven't watched the other video. Right, so I was just thinking my next task is to explain to nobody that's seen the previous video what happens with these actions, what we're doing here, and it's occurred to me we're gonna have to change these anyway because the way in my head I want to play the game this time round. So just to sort of explain what I mean, in the previous version of the game, what you did, you tapped an answer because we had the actions on the row. If you remember, we've moved those into the containers, and what happened was that submitted the answer and told us if we were right or wrong and added one to the score. But in this, the way I want to play the game in this version, I want our users to be able to tap between the containers and then submit their answer on the button, because mainly reason being it will give us an opportunity to use some different elements of Flutterflow that we haven't yet used. So our actions that we currently have on our containers now, the ones we moved from the rows, these are checking if the answer is correct and then updating our variables. So the variables we'd had, if you remember, or not, if you haven't seen the video, I'll run through them. So basically, this is obviously answer B, but this is the one we just added, which sets the value which we then use for deciding if it's coloured or white for the container, and that's one we just created. And the idea is that our user can decide away as many times as they want before they submit the answer. But what's happening here currently, we've got a single condition that checks if the answer in column B of our table is the correct answer. So if I bring up the table, basically we've got our columns with our questions in, and we have got the column for the correct answer. So what we're doing in this instance, if B is correct, if it's not the correct answer, just set it to false. If it is correct, we set the correct answer to true, and then we put our app state, which is our score. So we've got a page state, which is whether it's correct answer yes or no, which is that, which we use on the button, and then we've got an app state, which is the score. So if we're correct, we increment the score by 1, and we basically do the page refresh that resets everything on the page to our new values. This isn't going to work because we don't want to submit our answer. Ultimately, this action here submits our answer and tells us if we're right or wrong, which we don't want to do on tapping of the containers. So these actions we're going to have to change anyway. So, and then we're going to move those onto the button. So our current actions on the button is to do with question numbers and whether we've finished the game or not. So those will still stay, and then this one updates the question number we're using. So again, we're going to change that because we're going to change that to a random question number, as I said at the beginning. So this is going to change a bit anyway. Some of this stay, but we need to add some more in here that checks if the answer is correct, is basically what's going to happen. So I think what we'll do is, I think we need a new page state. So if we go into our page states, and we'll call it locked in, and that will be a type string. And what that is an initial field. We'll call it not set, because we're going to have to set an answer, but it's required value to do so. We confirm that. So we've got a new page state variable called locked in. Now what we do now is, on each of the containers, all we need to do is set the value of locked in. So what we'll do, if we remove the conditional action chain, so basically we need to keep the top one because that's the one we put in on this particular session, where we're just changing setting the true and false for these values, and changing the which we're using to change the color of our containers. And this is also going to be used to decide if it's the correct answer or not. That's how we're going to do it. But we no longer need any of this stuff. At least I don't think so. Certainly not for now. So if we delete those conditional actions, and in this instance we're going to add an action to update the page state. So state management, update page state, and we want to add our locked in page state, and we want to set the value, and the value we want to set is trivia row answer A, basically. And what that will do, once we tap our A container, it will set the value of our locked in answer to whatever A is, and then we need to do the same. So we'll copy that. We need to do the same on the other containers. So if we open that one, let's delete the conditionals and paste that one in, except in this instance it wants to be the value B, because we're on the B box, the B answer. And then on the next one, delete the conditionals, paste our action in, set our value to C. And this is, I mean, we could have left it the other way, which would have just let the user select a container, and then it would have told them if they're right or wrong. But I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to change it so it was a slightly different version of the game and a bit more complicated. So this just would allow our user to change their mind before they submit the answer. So it's not like we must accept your first answer. Delete condition actions, paste action, and that will be D. Now, in case you've missed what I've done here with these A, B, C and D, what happens is we have got a super base query on the page, so, and it's for a single row. So if we edit that, we are querying a single row, which is the filter, which is the question, the ID, which is the question number. Now at the moment it's incremented by 1, as I've just shown you in here. where we're incrementing question number by 1 every time we click submit and we refresh the database request, so it gives us a new question. We are going to change that. We're going to add more questions and we're going to do it with a random selection, but that's for the future. So right now what's going to happen is now all that happen is, so at the moment we're not checking our answers. All we're doing is just allowing our user to change the color of the containers based on an answer, basically, before they click the button, which we won't call next. We're going to change that as well. So but essentially it's just a slightly different version playing the game. So if we select the button and if we open the, no, actually let's go first to properties and we'll change the text from next to locked in. So all we're doing is saying this is our answer, we're locking it in. That's all we're doing there. And then we need to change the conditions to check the answers, basically make sure we're getting the right answer based on the value of the variable locked in. So we need to check that against there. So we still want to do that. Okay, right. So we want to place a new action above the conditional actions. So if you remember earlier what we did, we just cut it out completely and then replaced it because it's easier than trying to move these up and down, basically. So if we cut the action chain, and that will cut everything out of there, which we've got on there. Look, and then we add an action, and then we paste our actions down, which means we've now got a new action at the top, which is good, and we can put some more in between. So what we need to do is, I don't think we're going to need this one, I think it's just going to be conditional, but let's add a conditional to start off with. We've got an error up here which we'll get rid of shortly, and what we need to do is, first we need to do is check, so we're on a single condition, basically the value of our page state locked in is equal to our trivia row correct answer column. That's what we want to do, and if it's true we want to do essentially these actions. And we need to update the score because okay, right, so if it's true we need to add an action, so the state management, update page state and the score. So we've got our score, okay, that one was the app state because we're using it on more pages than just this page. So there we go, score, and we need to increment the score by 1. So basically if our user is correct, we're going to increment the score by 1. If they're incorrect, we don't increment the score by 1. Okay, and then what we're going to do before this happens, we want to really sort of delay, so all the navigation, so all this happens obviously pretty quickly. So once we've done this, we want the user, before they're told if they're correct or they're wrong, so that's the question, update that, that's fine, correct answer, reset value. Okay, right, so we need to decide if we're correct, yes or no. Right, okay, so, and then because we've taken that out of the previous refresh page, that's fine, and reset the correct answer, which is null, basically. Right, so in here we want to add another action, and that is a page state, which is correct answer. and in this set value to true, and in here an action set value to false. State management, got a page state and its correct answer, which is there, and set it to false because obviously we've got the wrong answer. Right, okay, now we don't actually need that. Right, so what's going to happen is here, if our user is correct, we're going to increment the score by 1. We're going to set our correct answer yes or no to true or false, and what that is for in the terms of the correct and wrong text, they're conditionally displayed based on that value, and that's what that's for. And then the next stage, then, if we got to question 20, if that's true, we navigate to finish because we've only got a 20 question quiz. We've only got 20 questions currently. We're going to add more, but we're still going to have a 20 question quiz. As I've explained, we're going to do it randomly. But if they're less than 20, what happens is then we increment the question value by 1, which is how we're deciding this number. We'll need a new variable for the actual question we're pulling out of the database, but that's not really relevant at this point. And then we're refreshing the database request based on the new question number, and we're resetting the value of the correct answer back to null because we don't know if it's true or false, and if it's null, none of the correct answer or wrong answer text will be visible. And then we're refreshing the page. Okay, now what I want to do is when you submit your answer, locked incorrect, before anything happens I want to add a delay. So if we add an action and put that above there, we may have to do this twice because it needs to be on both sides. Right, I want to add a delay. So on the, I'll do that again for the benefit of those that have not done this before. So add an action, and then we want to click the up arrow to move it above updating this stuff, because it's the as soon as we've clicked our answer, we want to wait. We don't want everything to happen instantly. We want to build a bit of suspense, basically, is what that boils down to. And then on the utilities section on the right hand side for the type of actions we can use, we've got one here called wait delay. Now 1000 milliseconds is a second, so we're going to go for 3 seconds. And what we're going to do is copy that action, and we're going to paste it underneath this version as well, and then we're going to move it above there. So basically what's happened is we've got a 3 second wait that gives us a space between here and in here, which is where we increment the score and select the correct answer to true. So hopefully the rebuild current page works. If not, we'll stick a rebuild current page down here as a separate thing. And then we move on to the next question. So before we navigate, so basically what we're saying is we've got a 3 second delay and we want the are you right or wrong on your score to change to happen. And then we want another delay before we then navigate to what's going to happen next, which is basically either the end or the refresh page and the database requests. So I'm not sure if the delay needs to go in there or in there. I'm going to put it down the bottom there, but we certainly need to put one in there. So if we paste the delay in there, so it gives us another 3 seconds after we've had these actions before we navigate to the finish. And then what will, in fact, if we just put it in there, then all that will happen. That is question number, refreshing the database. Yeah, we'll just put a delay in there. So we've got a 3-second delay before we complete the actions there. So that should set our answers, because what we did on the container, we set it so whichever container you select, our value of the locked in variable is being set to the corresponding column in the Supabase table, which has got the 4 answers in. And then what we've then said on the button, we just checking if that is correct or not. We're having a bit of a delay. We're going to then let our user know if they're right or wrong, and then we're going to then either finish the game if we've got more than 20 seconds, sorry, more than 20 questions, or if we haven't, if we're less than 20 questions, we're going to carry on the game with a 3-second delay, and then we're just going to move on with a new question. I think there's going to be some page auto refresh issues in here somewhere, which we're going to have to, we'll have to manually force it to do it. I might be wrong, but my instinct tells me that's what's likely to happen. So that should somewhat work, I think, because we're changing the question number still. I think the best thing to do is try it. So what I'm going to do, for those of you who have not done this before, you've got run mode in the top corner there, and this will give us the opportunity to test our app out. So I'm going to click that, and then I'll see you on the other side when it's all loaded and ready to go. Right, so we have started, we are got our new image, and so if we click start, okay, so we've got an overflow issue there, which is, and we've got a issue there with alignment, but we can cope with those. So what should happen now? Yeah, that's not, I mean, you can see the colours changing, but I don't think the colour we've used for the grey is working. Oh, I think no, I'm going to fix that actually. Right, so what's the question? Which movie in Harry Potter? So we know it's Sorcerer's Stone. So if we go locked in, so have a 3-second wait. Correct. And then another 3-second wait, and then we get the new question. Okay, so that functions. Who played the lead role in the movie Forrest Gump? It was Tom Hanks. So again, you can see they are changing colour, but not to my satisfaction, even close to my satisfaction. But I know we're going to fix that, so that's not a problem. So Tom Hanks, we'll lock it in. Should have a 3-second wait. Is 3 seconds too long, possibly? And then 3-second wait again. We move on to the next question. And then we'll get one wrong. Which movie does the character Darth Vader appear? Well, obviously he was in Titanic. Locked in, 3-second wait. Wrong answer. Wrong. Score won't update. Excellent, so that works. Now what we're going to do though now, we're going to completely change the colour scheme because it's pretty terrible, basically. So if we head back into our game, and we'll start at the beginning. So go to the home page, and I've been thinking about this anyway. So on the page, you see on the right hand side, just on the page itself, got the background colour. Now then, we're going to change it to black, which I thought it was 0, 0, all the zeros was black. So let's see what happens if we put that in there. There you go, use colour. So we're going full on dark mode basically. And then if we go to the game page and our page itself, and then choose the colour, and if you remember, when we've picked custom colour, use it, it'll now be in our recent colours, so we can use that. And what we need to do is, so we've got an alignment thing there, don't forget, so we need to check that out. But what we'll do first is all the text needs to become white. You won't be able to read it obviously, but it's going to certainly easier to pick it out from there than when everything's black. So on all the text objects, change the text color to secondary background, which is all the F's, which is basically white in hex colors. Secondary background. And if you're using a different coloured theme, just go to custom colours, type in all the Fs, or feel free to choose whatever colour you feel is suitable. And then we've got the overflow thing there as well. So let's check the background. Now if you remember on the previous video, we had a similar issue, and what we need to do is expand the text object so it will fill down and over more than one line, and we do that simply by this button here in the expansion, and that does that. We've already got the expansion set up on these. I think, memory serves me right, I think if the questions are answer a bit longer than one line, we are going to have to change the size of the containers, which we can do pretty simply actually, which we may do that anyway, to be honest. Right, now then, container colours. I think we're going to have the question as black still with the border. Okay, border colour, hang on, that's why I've used the wrong, changed the wrong thing. That fill colour is what we want to change to, if we make it black, same as the question, same as the page, but we've got the border. And then the containers themselves, I think what we'll do is also the fill colour wants to be basically black. However, when we select it, we want to change it to be red. Now, one of the problems with this is that once I've noticed this with Flutterflow, I confirm, notice with Flutterflow, even though that is what it, I'll go back into test mode in a second because you'll see that it's one of the annoying things I've found with Flutterflow when you start changing conditional colours. They don't actually change in the editor. I may be doing something wrong, but I'm not sure I am. It's quite annoying, and if I am doing something wrong, I'd love somebody to point it out to me, because every time I've tried to change conditional colours in after the fact in the editor, they have stayed the original colours that I set them, but they do actually change when you oh no, getting carried away there. They do actually change when you publish. So actually that wants to be red, and then basically the black. Confirm. So you can't read the writing now, which is quite annoying, but actually they want a border one as well now, don't they? So border colour red, and with our border width can be 1, quite a thin one, and then we don't need any elevation on these, so we'll just get rid of that. And is that still got elevation on? Yeah, let's get rid of the elevation on that one. And then likewise on this one. I mean, this is all pretty much personal preference. Should you wish to do something different, feel free. As I've said several times already just in this video, design is not my expertise, so you've probably got your own ideas, most of which will probably be better than mine on what something should look like, so feel free to do that. Yeah, but I'm just trying to make it look something reasonably sensible for the game. Now if I go back in test mode, it expires in 3 minutes. Let's go in instant reload, and you'll see what I mean about the change in these colours. That is quite annoying actually. I suspect if I got rid of the conditionals, change the colour and then reset the conditionals, it'd work. That's probably the way to do it. So while that's loading, we will change those both to white as well. There's such things as too many colours, obviously, so we'll keep it reasonably. There we go. So if we start the game, and there you go. Oh, I haven't got the border on that one. We'll go back to that. That's certainly better than what we had before. Considerably better. Right. So that has got the border on. Okay. I'll come back to that if it's still a problem. So axis alignment there. Still got time. Instant reload. Yeah, right. So just doubly check that. See if I've centralized the score. If not, we will put a row within the column. We may have to do that. But that basically allows us to play the game and submit our questions, submit our answers. So the next section is to add more questions and randomly select the questions. So I will ask ChatGPT for some more questions, and I will, once I've done that, which I did the previous time, and I had to check the answers, obviously, because it was, what they did was pretty terrible. No, that's there. So what we'll do, but that's fixed. That's so much better. Right. So in here, what we're going to do, that text, if you remember, we've got a stack, has got an image, a column, and the text, but for some reason the text isn't sitting central. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy that text and I'm going to delete it, and then I'm going to add a row in the column, and then I'm going to paste the text back in the column and centralize it. Now it doesn't look like it's changed, but hopefully that should now have it central, and you'll see when it comes up, hopefully that will have it central in the circle, which obviously it needs to be, because otherwise it looks terrible. There we go. That's how we do that. So it's just a good example actually of making sure you're using the elements correctly in terms of your layouts to get your widgets where you want them to be. Otherwise it can look terrible, and it's actually quite easy to change it. So, and then if you remember rightly, what I was saying is, if you remember, we had the error on the question where we had the overflow error. If we've got long answers at this point, we are going to get those. So how we get over that, and I'll fix that first before we move on. So I've got this really annoying thing with the right. So if you see, our text is all expanded, our text items with the answers in all expanded, which means they will overflow. But at the moment, our containers are all a set height. So what that means is our text will overflow the container if the text is longer than the container size. So if you've got, for instance, 3 lines, 2 lines, it might fit, but it will look terrible. 3 lines is going to overflow the container, it's going to look even worse. So what we need to do is the height of the container, we want to be infinite. So we will need to probably put some padding on. Oh no, we've got enough padding on the row. That's fine, don't do it on the text. So we've got padding on the row. So what we need to do on the container is change the height and just delete the answer, that option on the height. And then what they do, they become infinite, which means as your text expands, if you've got multiple lines of text, your containers will expand with the text. We don't need to do this on this one, I don't think, because we're only going to have 2 line questions, I think, in reality, and we've got quite a big container. But these we've kept smaller purposely, and you'll see when it reloads, you won't notice the difference particularly. It's only as if there's a longer answer, and one of the questions has become which one. So we'll come back and say we'll just show that briefly before we move on. So you can see it's not visibly changed that much. What will happen is, though, when these go on to, say for instance it was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone along with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire and the other 5 or whatever it is, and it goes on to two or three rows, 2 or 3 lines, this your bordered area, your container would expand to include the text and keep your 10 pixel. If we go to the row, there you go, we've got the 10 pixel padding around the outside, so it will just but essentially the text will expand and keep the padding the same within the container. Okay, so what finish page? So I think we'll come back to that. We'll do that at the end. We'll use our circle again and display the score slightly differently and make it look like this. So right, so I think that's it on this page in terms of playing the game in its current form. What I'm going to do now is look at how we are going to select some random questions. So I'm going to go away. I haven't created the questions yet. I'm going to get ChatGPT to do it, because obviously I haven't got to sit there and make up more questions. We'll get another 20. Then we'll look at how we're going to randomly select them. Okay, so before I import the questions, I've got ChatGPT to, well, make 20 questions up, of which I had to change probably 6 or 7 of them, but that's by the by. I have fixed the colour issues on here. So what I did on the containers, I did have to delete the conditional action. So you go in, you copy the conditional action, copy the variable, and then you go back and you remove the variable, change the colour to whatever colour background you want, and then paste the variable back again. So I fixed that. That looks so much better. So we need to go into our Superbase table now. So if you watched the video, you will already have this set up if you followed along. If you don't have this set up, basically you need to create a table in Superbase called Trivia, and there is 2 documents, one from the original video which will be linked, and also the document from this video will have further 20 questions in. Right, so you need to click on Insert and Import Data from CSV, and then you can either click to upload a file or just drag and drop it in from your Windows Explorer or whatever. So I've got it over here, just drag and drop that in there. Hopefully that will go without any 19 rows. So it's only giving me 19 questions by the looks of it. Okay, import data. So once you have dragged in your file and clicked OK and it's imported, you'll have 39 questions numbered 1 to 39. So what we're going to do, we're going to set to select a random number between 1 to 39, and then we are going to add those into a list that we can check we haven't used the same one, and go from there. So we're done with Superbase for now. We are going to go back in here for our leader table later on, but for now, in terms of the questions, that's just done in there. So if we head back to Flutterflow. Right, so I've been trying to rack my brains thinking what is the best way for me to select the questions randomly and not use the same question twice, and I come to the conclusion the way I would do it is not the way other people do it, and I think that's probably normal. We all do things our own ways. So I'm thinking I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it all in Flutterflow. Now if you watch any of these other videos that I've done, you'll see that I do a lot of work in Superbase, and as that's kind of my area I'm more comfortable with, that's how I'm going to do this, which is a good thing really, because it means we're going to introduce something. If you are beginning to Flutterflow, we're going to introduce some custom actions which you can use to do this task, which at some point if you're building in Flutterflow, you're going to have to use some kind of custom code anyway to build anything that functions beyond what Flutterflow gives you natively. So that's how I'm going to do it. So the first thing we need is a new app state variable. So if you remember on the left hand side, this is where our app states are, and we've currently got one which records the score, and we need a new one, and we're going to call that questions. Now what we're going to do, we are going, and it is a integer, and it is going to be a list, so you need to have that selected. So we're going to have a list of integers, so we're going to select all the questions before we start is basically what we're going to do, because my first thought was to, every time you answer a question, generate a new question number and then iterate over the list to see if you've used it, and if you have, generate a new question number and iterate over the list, so on and so forth, so you get in a new question every time. But honestly, it doesn't seem like the best way of doing it when I actually sat and thought about it. So what we're going to do, when we click the start button, we are going to generate all the questions at once, and then we'll just select them each along the list. So what we're going to do, we're going to add 20 question numbers between 1 and 39 to this list, and we're going to do that in Superbase. We're going to create the list. We're going to create the question list in Superbase, and then return it to Flutterflow to add to the app state variable here. And then all we're going to do then is, when you start playing the game, each question will change based on where you are along the list. So you're going to have a list of numbers, and we are going to change them as we go. Now, how can I demonstrate that? So if I go to, I'll tell you what. So this is basically what it will look like. So we're going to have a list. So our variable is called questions. So you're not going to see this, but this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be a list of integers. So Superbase will return questions, and it will be 21, 1, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 13, etc., etc., until we get to 20. And that's essentially what it's going to do. So we're going to return this kind of scenario from Superbase with 20 separate question numbers, and then we're going to select that one, and then that one, and then that one, until we get to the end, and then we've completed the game. That's how I've decided to do it. Again, not whether it's the best way or not, I don't know, but I certainly think selecting the questions beforehand is a much more efficient way of doing it than iterating over the list every time you want to generate a new question number. So that's what I'm going to do, and the easiest place to do that is, in my mind, in Superbase. So that's what I've decided to do and why we're doing it. So that being said, what we need is a custom action. So apologies again if you're brand new to this, but all the code that I'm going to now show you will be available in the Google Doc. So there'll be in the Google folder with all the bits and pieces in, with the images and the questions. There'll be a Google Doc file which will have this code, which you can just copy and paste into the relevant places, and I'll show you where to put it and how to do it, and that way you will not have to write anything. So we need a new custom action. So on the left hand side here, which this is something you won't have done yet, certainly if you're new, if you've been playing with Flutterflow for a while, obviously you probably will do. If you've seen any of the videos, you will have done. But so we've got custom code, and currently we've got nothing, and we want an action. So we've got a new custom action, and we're going to give it a name. I'm going to call it get questions. And basically what we do in Flutterflow, this is where we add our code between sections where it says do not remove or modify the code above, and we put it between here. So need to learn to type, I suppose. So this is basically a standard, what we call a remote call procedure, which I will, which if you watch any of the videos, actually a video specifically on remote call procedures on the channel, which you can go and find and have a look at, and it's literally about what they are and why we do them. So what I'll do, I'll finish typing this and I'll come back when I've done it, and I'll explain what we've done. Okay, so I've finished typing that. So basically we are created a function called getQuestions, and we are using Superbase's remote procedure call. So that means what we are doing, we are calling a function within Superbase, a Postgres function within Superbase that is called questions, which is what this is here, and that returns an array of values. And what we need to do is turn that into basically a list. So Superbase works in arrays, and we need it to be a Dart list, and that's what we're doing. We're basically casting the array to a list, and here they're returning the answer, returning the list to our page when we call it, which when I actually call this, I'll show you what we do there. And you see we need a return value, which is a list, so that's ticked, a list of integers, which is what we're creating. And this is just to catch any errors that may occur. So that is the custom action code. That's all you need to do. Like I say, you can just copy and paste it. There will not be any need for you to type all that out. You can just copy and paste it from where we're getting it from. So what we need to do now, so we need to go into the start button, and this is where we're going to call the custom action from. Okay, so at the minute all we're doing is navigating to the game, and what we need to do is add some more actions. So if we add action and we want to call our custom action, so if you see down here on the right hand side, you've got an option for custom actions, and when you click the drop down, you'll see the get questions option there, which wouldn't have been there before we created the custom action because there wouldn't have been any. So we get questions, and basically what that does, that will execute the custom function that we created a second ago, and then the output we are giving it, so the output variable, i.e. the list of numbers that we're creating, call it question numbers. And then we need another action, which it will be our app state, and that will be our questions list, and then we're going to set the value, and it wants to be action output. So the action output, so the output from our custom action, which is a list of integers, and that basically becomes the value of our app state, and then we navigate to the game. So what we're doing there, when we tap the button, we are executing our Superbase remote procedure call, which is our custom action that we've just created, which returns a list of numbers, which is our random number selection that we are putting into the game. We are adding those to our app state variable, which is where we're going to call them from within the game. If you remember, an app state we can use on multiple pages, whereas page state is only locked to the page that you create it in. So hence why the app state, we're creating it in the home page and we're using it again in the game page, and then we're navigating to the game. So that's what we're doing there. So there is some more to do in Superbase, and that's where we've got to create the function that selects the numbers, and that's what we'll go and do now. Right, so we're back in Superbase. Now, I don't want to overcomplicate this, so what I have done, I have actually created the function we need prior to clicking the record button for this section. So basically, on your left hand side in your Superbase dashboard there, you've got the SQL editor, and this is where you create your functions that you can use, and you can call them from your Flutterflow application. So we are calling the function questions. So if I go back to Flutterflow and our custom action, this is basically what we're calling here. So the Superbase remote procedure call, and we're calling the function questions, and that is this. What we're doing, we are into question numbers, i.e. our blank integer, we are selecting distinct, i.e. individual, not repeated IDs from the ID column, and we are limiting the number we're collecting to 20, and we're putting them into our empty array question numbers, and we're returning question numbers. So return as in that's what comes back to us when we run the function. So when you've copy and pasted this in, all you need to do is click run, and it will say success, no rows returned. And then in your database section here on the left hand side, click on functions, and you'll have a new function there with return type as a blank integer called questions. Now we can test this in Supabase. So if you go new query and you type select questions, this will run the function and we will get the array with the question numbers down here. And basically, as you can see pretty quickly, we've got, as I displayed on the Google Doc a few minutes ago, we have got a selection of questions which are not repeated. And that's how I've decided to do it. So then this information here is what goes back into Flutterflow, and that's how we're selecting it into to select our questions. So if we go back to Flutter, we don't need to do anything else here. Basically, we've created the function. We don't need this bit again. This is just to test it and make sure it works, which it does. So we're generating this information, and that's been sent back now to Flutterflow. So we're done in Supabase now, and we will come back here to do the league table a bit later on. Okay, so we've done with that. So on the action there, the question numbers, and we are setting our value of our list of questions to the question numbers output, as I've just explained, which is our action output. Hopefully, I know the reason I've gone to explain that maybe more than I normally do is I've tried to aim this at very beginners and slightly more than very beginners, but at some point, as I said, you're going to have to do this stuff anyway. So it's good to get your head around it in the beginning. I am slightly different to others. I do tend to, my default position is go and do it in Supabase because I just find it easier. Some people just keep playing with the widgets, but I just thought with the Flutterflow widgets, but to me instantly I thought, well, I can just do that in Supabase. It's just so much simpler to do. Anyway, our next thing then, we need to use the question numbers. So if we go to our game page, now our backend query is currently, the ID is the question. So basically what we're doing at the moment, we are calling a single row from our database, and we are filtering it by field ID in the table is equal to the question number, which, if you remember correctly, we are iterating each time by 1 every time we answer a question, which is down here somewhere. Increment the question by 1. Now what we're going to actually do is change that. So we're going to edit our query, and our filter this time is equal to our app state question, list of questions, and our variable options, we want item index. So on our list of question numbers, the index is where it relates to within here. So they start as 0, so that would be 21 to be index 0, 1 to be index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, and so on and so forth. So what we're doing is specific index, and our specific index wants to be our question number, which we're iterating by 1 anyway. So we're incrementing our question number by 1 each time, starting at 1, although we'll have to change it to start at 0, and it'll be 0 to 19 to get 20 probably. So we're starting at 0, incrementing it by 1 each time, and that is how we are currently getting the questions. But as we're doing that anyway, we're just going to do the same thing, but we're going to increment along the list of items and get the specific index based on the question number. So the first one will be 0, and we'll put a default value of 0 anyway. And the second one will be 1, 2, until we get to question 19 or 20, whichever. It will be 19 to get 20 for starting at 0. So we confirm that. And we confirm that. Okay. So we need then to go to our page state, and our question number needs to be default to 0 because the first index is 0. Confirm. So that should, he says, allow us to generate our question numbers dynamically in Supabase and just iterate through them. So we're basically preparing the game before we play it to get the 20 questions and then carrying on from there. So I think we should give that a try. So click run and we'll prepare the session. Okay, so we're up and running. So let's click start and see what happens. Okay, that's good. Although I do believe that is actually the first question, so that's slightly worrying. So, oh, okay, D doesn't work. We'll have to go and check that, so we'll get that wrong. Okay, the 3 seconds. Wrong. And okay, so there's something there we need to change, and D doesn't work. So something on the colouring that's wrong, but we can sort that out. Which time story searching for his son? That's Finding Nemo. Locked in. And story of Wizard of Oz. So they need clearing up. Okay, that's not a problem. So we are definitely getting the question numbers, which is great. But I just want to go into, we had Finding Nemo and the Sorcerer's Stone, and we've got the Wizard of Oz. So if we go into Supabase and go to the table editor and go to trivia, so we had Harry Potter, we had that one, Finding Nemo, which is number 6, and then Dorothy, which is down here somewhere, Wizard of Oz. So yeah, so we're getting random numbers, so that's good. So I'm just going to go back into Flutterflow now and we'll have a look at fixing those issues with the buttons. Right, so we're back in our quiz game page, and so D wasn't doing anything. So obviously I haven't changed the fill colour there. If you look on C, we've got the conditional colour in, but on D, for some reason I obviously didn't paste that down. And I guess that's one of the problems with copy and pasting, is make sure you actually do what you're meant to do. So if basically answer D equals true, so we want the page state, answer D equals true, confirm there. So that sorts that one out, and then what we need to do is reset the values. So what we're doing, we are tapping these, but what we're doing when we're changing the question, so once they're not resetting back to all black. So if you remember when I was just playing with it, they did change colour as they're meant to do, but when you changed your question, it was the one you selected previously was staying red. So what we need to do in here is down here somewhere, we've got a page state, resetting that value. So if we add some in there, answer A, and we want to basically set all those to false. Set B to false. Set C to false. And set D to false. Right, so that basically will clear those. So when you select and you go to a new question, they'll all be back to false. So they'll all be back to the sort of black background. Okay, so that should be it for selecting our questions and asking them. So then we need to do the leaderboard now. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a page and a settings page, which is only going to be just to add a username, which we're going to store in a app state variable, and then we will add a Supabase table with scores basically. So we'll go off and we will do that now. We'll start with the table. We'll go in Supabase first, start the table, and then we'll come back and finish off everything else in Flutterflow. Okay, so we're back in Supabase and we want to create a new table. So on the left hand side here, so if you're not in the table editor, just on the left hand side on your menu options, click into table editor, and then you want to click new table, and we will call it scoreboard, and we need to add a couple of columns. Now we'll enable RLS, we'll put a policy in there in a second, and add column. So we want username, and that will be a type text, and we want a score, and that will be an integer basically. And I think that's all we need, because all we're going to do is going to call these and display them so you can see where you are on the scoreboard. That's basically what we're going to do. Add in 4 columns, and we've got a new table. So we've got RLS enabled. So basically what that means is RLS is how Supabase controls access to tables, and it's the security policies basically. So because we've got RLS enabled and we've got no policies in place, the table will not be able to be written to or read from or deleted from, or no actions basically be able to take place on it. So we need to add a couple of policies, or one policy really, to allow us to write to it and to select from it. Now, like we did previously, we're just going to keep this simple. We're going to open it up to a public table so it can be updated and read from publicly. It's not really how you should do it. Also, I'm going to do a video on RLS policies to go through this, but because this is aimed at sort of just learning the basics and learning your way around these things, I didn't want to overcomplicate it. So basically we need to create a new policy, so you do that and then click there, and they have changed this. So but we want it for insert and we want it for select, so we're gonna have to do 2 because you can't select them both. I thought you used to be able to, but they have changed this. So, and all you want to put in there is true, and all that means that if we want to select from the policy, true means it's going to be a public policy. It means anybody with the link with the URL for the policy can select from it. I need to give the policy a name, and we'll call it select true. And then we need to create another policy because we need to be able to insert to it as well, and that'll be the same, and that'll be select true. No, it won't. That'll be insert true, obviously, because we've just done select. Like I say, this is not best practice doing it this way, but just for ease and simplicity, that's how we're going to do it. You should really have it configured so only authenticated users, etc., can do it, but for ease of use, simplicity, and just to show the processes, that's how we're doing it for this instance. Okay, so that's really all we need to do in Supabase now. We've got our new table called scoreboard, we've got the policies in place, so that's us done in Supabase. We can now go back and finish this off in Flutterflow. Right, so we're back in Flutterflow, and what we want to do is allow our users to add a username, and then we're going to display the scoreboard on the finish page, and we're going to obviously update this so it looks the same as the others. So on the home page, what we need to do is add a new widget. We're going to add an app bar, so that's down there. We drag that in to the top. Now obviously we don't want it like that because that's no use at all, so just click the colour, and on the custom colours there we've still got our black. We'll just change it so it looks the same as the rest, and the elevation we will change that. In fact, just get rid of that. And show default button. No, that's a back button, which we don't want. Like you can see it anyway because the button's black. What we need to do is add a icon in the up bar there. So it needs a bit of padding. So we'll give it 25 to the right and make it maybe a bit bigger. Too big possibly. That'll do. And the colour, we will make it, it's going to look right red. That'll do. Right, so basically what this does, is we can use that to navigate to a new page. Basically is all we're going to do. So we need a blank page. So if you remember, to create a page, we just add a new page here. And on a blank page, I'm going to call it settings. Now, there aren't really any app settings as such on this, obviously, but just so this is where it'd probably go if you were building an app for real. So we'll make the background and change the background to black again. And all we want in here is a text box where we can type in our username. So what we'll do is delete that and then scroll to the bottom is where all your form elements are, and we want a text field. So drag that in there and we will align it to the middle, and could do with some more padding. So let's make it, doesn't need to be that wide obviously. And we'll give it a border. So if you go down to the bottom is where your border options and things are. Make it an outline border, and the border colour we will stick with our red colour. Border width only needs to be 1. And then the focus border colour we will make white. So when you activate the box, it will go white. And then on the label, we will call that username. Okay, so that's that, and then we want a row beneath there, and we'll give that 20 padding or something all the way around, 16, 18. And then in there we want a button which we center, change the button properties so the text says update and the color will be red. Right, and all we're going to do here is when you come to this page is type in your username, click update, and go back to your home page. So I got rid of the up bar there. We actually want the, let's put the up bar back. I shouldn't have got rid of that. Make the color same. We don't want the elevation. We do want the default button, but we want the button color to be secondary background. So we should have a back button on there when we look at it, which should take us back to our previous page. Right, and what we'll do also, just to let's add another row, and we had 18 all the way around. I think actually I'm going to align that back to the top, and then on the top of that row, yeah, we'll change that so we'll be 18, 19, 19, and then 40, something like that. and then actually, and the bottom as well, 40. And then what we're going to put in here is a text object, which we want the color. We can change to secondary background, and we'll make the font size a bit bigger. Right, so we'll change that actually to say update username, because update username. Right, so what we're going to do, if you then want an app state variable, call a new one, and it's called username, and it's a string, and it wants to be persisted. So what that means is when the app's restarted, your app state variable remembers its value, and this is how we're going to keep the username consistent. Probably the best way to do it is in a database, but again, because we're not using authentication or anything in here, it's going to be difficult to get the right one for the right user, so it's just as easy to do it as in this. And we're using a persisted variable again, which is something that's just something we haven't done before in this session. So if we go back to there, and when you click on the, in fact on the text first, we want the value of the text to be the value of our username, and our default variable wants to be player1. And then on the update button, we want to add some actions, and all we're going to do is state management, update our app state, set our username field, set value, and that will be whatever the text field value is. So what will happen is when we update that, our username will update to the one we've put in, and then alongside player1, it might be one of these things that needs a refresh or whatever to make it sort of change dynamically, but we'll check that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We'll check that when we get to it. Now I've started this, I'm not happy with this black background scenario, but we won't change it now. So could have done with being something less black possibly. And then that's all we need to do there, and then we'll have a back button to get back. Okay, so on the home page and the settings button, we need to navigate to our settings page, and that's all we need to do there. And then in here, let's add a row above there, that's fine, some text, and put it in the center of the row. Select the text, the value wants to be our username, and the default will still be player1. And now I see this player1, it kind of makes me want to change this into like an 80s style, like the standard things in arcades with really blocky text and neon colours. That's kind of what it's making me want to do, but I think it's a bit late in the day for that now. But it would look pretty good like that. So if we had all this as like neon colours on the black background with 80s style everywhere, that'd definitely be the way to do it, I think, thinking about it now. Make that a bit bigger possibly. So when that says player1, it'd be like in neon pink and a really blocky font type. Yeah, that'd be the way to do it, but I'm not going to change that at this stage. Right, so that's that. So we're going to display our username, start the game, and when we on the game and on the locked in, so we've got some actions here, and when our questions is reach 20, which needs to be 19 because we're starting at 0, here, what we're going to do is add an action here, and that is backend. Oh, actually, what we need to do first, which I haven't yet done. So every time you make an update in your Supabase tables, you need to go back into your Supabase settings and update your schema, because what will happen is, you can see here we've only got the trivia table in at the moment. We do not have the scoreboard table because the one we created earlier, because I haven't updated the schema. So click on that and then you go, the scoreboard table will arrive. So now we can go back in here, open up the action editor and go back in here, and what we want is a backend database, Supabase, insert row. Our table will be scoreboard, and the fields we are setting is the username, which is our new app state we've just created, and we are then also adding the score. So I'm thinking like one of those old 80s video games when you used to finish a game and you get a list of the players that recently played and all their scores. That's the kind of thing that we're going for here. So what have we done now with that needs to be the app state, which is the score. Right, so that will go in the table. Okay, so that will, when the game's finished, it will tell us our score, put it in the table. While I'm here, I'm going to change that to black. That's a bit better. Right, and then on the finish page, what we're going to do, we want to change this so we are looking a bit more like the game page with the score. So let's select the stack. In fact, let's select the whole row that the stack's in, and we want to copy that row. And on the finish, if we get rid of that, and there we go, bit of moving about, and I think now what we need to do is move that to maybe 20, because what we're going to do is put something else in here. So our background colour we now know needs to be black. I'm still tempted to change it again, and then your score wants to be secondary background, which is just white. So that's your score, and then here we want to show the leaderboard. Right, so we want to put the leaderboard in here, and then you scroll through the leaderboard and the finish button will be at the bottom. So we want a list view, and in the list view, if we add a row, I think we can do it with a row. I normally just use containers for this, so but we'll try it with a row, see what happens. And we want 2 text elements, which we will space equally, and that's that. So let's go back to there, select that. The list view, we now need to give it a Supabase query, and what we're getting is from the scoreboard a list of rows. There are no filters, basically just a list of everything that's within that table. Confirm that, and what we need to do is change that text obviously to white, and then on the row itself, let's give it some padding, and the 2 text objects, let's change the size to 16 on both of those, and then the values basically is scoreboard row username, and default variable value will be we'll call it NPC, as in for non-playable character, because in case there are no values in there. And then the scoreboard row there, we'll call it the score, and the default variable value we'll call it 0. Okay, and that's those. And then what we're going to do is make sure that our column is scrollable. So as these expand, this will expand basically depending on how many is in the table, and then you scroll through it till you finish at the bottom, which will clear the score value and navigate back to the home page. I think that should do it. I think. So I'll try it and see what happens. I think that's all we need to do. So yeah, we'll run the app and hope for the best. Right, so we are in run mode. We've got our player 1 text, got everything else. So if we go to settings, we've got our back button there, you see. So update username. Let's change that to, I need to change that background text to white, obviously, and then update. And yes, that's fine. So go back there. That's good. That's what we need. Let's go start the game. So I'm going to mark down my questions as I do them, as in the just sort of number. Make sure there's 20. So that will be Vito Corleone. It might take a minute because obviously I am got the timer on. Indiana Jones is, ooh, missed that one when I was checking ChatGPT's answers. It's I'll go for that one. So I'm not quite sure which one it's chosen as the right answer. Who directed Jurassic Park? It was Spielberg. Who directed Shawshank? Ooh, that's a great film. Don't know who it wasn't. Scorsese or Tarantino. Let's go for, I didn't know who directed it actually. There we go. Who played the lead role in the movie Silence of the Lambs? It was Hopkins. Correct. No, that's 5 done. Nemo. Finding Nemo. You don't need to be a particularly movie expert to answer these questions, obviously. Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone if you're living in this part of the world. Correct. Which film tells the story of a young girl coming to terms with her emotions? Inside Out. Brilliant film, as most Pixar films are. Generally speaking, the ones that are not sequels. Who is the protagonist in the movie Shawshank Redemption? Andy Dufresne. If you don't want to watch me play the quiz, feel free to skip along. Which movie features a group of toys that come to life when the humans are not present? Toy Story. Now, what I do know is the way these questions are being presented, they're definitely random numbers, because some of them are from the first set and some are from the second set, which is good. And Star Wars. So yeah, so we're definitely getting random numbers, which is brilliant. And Tom Hanks. When did Captain Luke Skywalker appear? Usually the character Indiana Jones make his first appearance. Raiders. And that's 15 questions. Who directed the movie Inception? As I said in the previous video, the world's greatest director. Which was a young girl named Dorothy, swept away to a magical land. Wizard of Oz. So we're getting close to the end, so hopefully it'll not throw an error when we get there. We go on the trip to see a dead body. That's Stand By Me. That's 18. Which movie each group of friends have gone on the trip to see? No, we're still going. Right, which period does the character James Bond first appear? Yeah, Doctor No. Right, that's 19 questions. Do we get another one? Yes, we do. Which movie does Neo live in a simulated reality? And obviously that's the Matrix. So in theory, we shouldn't get another question. Or maybe have I counted wrong? I may be counted wrong. Who's his line name? Simba, Lion King. Because I've got them all right and we're still only counted to 19, so there we go. My score is 20. We've got the leaderboard up and we finish. So really, the only problem we've got there is on the settings page, we have got to change the text field to white, basically, and actually the label colour to white as well. Label colour, call that white as well. Right, and that, I think, brings us to the end. I don't think there's much else we need to do there. I think it works perfectly well. That's brilliant. So hopefully that was worth the nearly 2 hours or whatever it is to sit through that. You may benefit, like I say, right at the very beginning from watching the first video as well, although I do appreciate that is quite a long time, but depending on where you are in your Flutterflow and Super Base skills, you may not feel the need to do that. But hopefully, even if you don't watch it all, hopefully there's some snippets in there that you can take away. I think the bit with selecting the random numbers is particularly useful. And yes, so as always, thank you for watching. If you have made it this far, well done, and please consider a like and a subscribe for more of the same. Thank you.